Welcome, everyone, to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I'm here with Coach Katie, and today is episode 85, and this is part 3 of our series on creating a training plan. And so this episode, what we're going to discuss is we've brought together the pieces of, we've laid the foundation, we framed the house in terms of establishing the overall weekly volume that we want to hit over the duration of our training plan. Now we're going to take that weekly training volume and we're going to split it up across the days of the week and talk about how we sequence workouts. What are we trying to keep in mind as we build workouts for specific adaptation, and then how do we sequence them in a way that is executable while at the same time managing training stress and fatigue and aiding recovery, so that we can keep progressing and not overload ourselves. So there's a little bit of an art to the creation of a training plan, even though a lot of it is science driven, and you can even go on ChatGPT these days and have it create a training plan. But there's one thing that these AI platforms are missing, and it's the incorporation of your daily life into your training plan and how that weaves in to your daily workouts. What's the best way to sequence these in order to have it match up with the demands of your life throughout the week, because not everybody's week is, the same week in and week out. So the week changes. So the training plan has to adjust so that you can execute the plan and you're not trying to just say, okay, this is just one more thing that I have to get done. There is a certain degree of that, but we want to minimize that because we want to enjoy the process of getting to race day. And it's not just, hey, this isn't just, we're building fitness, and just keep progressing. We want to try and enjoy this to a certain extent, even though some of it's hard. So that's one of the things that these kind of AI platforms just are missing. They're missing the human touch and that input that we as coaches put into the training plan and work with our athletes one-on-one. It's more than just numbers and, getting this done and, what's the training stress score for this episode, for this workout that you did, and, what's the next training stress score? There's more to it than that. And so we wanted to bring this piece in to talk about how we as coaches look at training volume, how we want to distribute that in a way that is responsible and respective of the athlete's life, and not to overload the athlete, but again, manage that stress and fatigue. It's so important and crucial so that you develop the adaptation that you want and you get to race day feeling healthy and prepared rather than strung out and basically holding on to dear life, and you're just not going to enjoy your race day. So again, this is episode 85. It is part 3 of our series. So let's get right into the thick of it. So Katie, do you want to do you have anything that you'd like to bring up at the start of the episode? You want to get us started?
When I'm sitting down, to create a training plan for an athlete, I mean, we've already talked about the volume piece, but when I'm looking at the week, I'm trying to kind of think about my process with it. I think you brought up an interesting point. I mean, I use Training Peaks as well. I know you do. And one of the things I ask my athletes to do is to put in availability in there. So if they have days that maybe they can only, or they're limited to maybe doing a run, or they can't do a lifting or something, or they have something they have to take the day completely off. I really encourage that because like you said, there's things that come up. And so, usually in the course of the week when I'm trying to plan the training plan, the first thing I'm looking at is just, what's going on with my athlete. When I'm putting in my own training plan, the same thing, I'm kind of looking at my schedule for the week and I'm trying to piece together the days, and first kind of looking at what my availability is and what days I have a little more time and how I'm going to fit things in. And so I think that's kind of the first piece for me is just kind of, okay, if I'm working with someone, are there days they need off, or are there days that they're limited in time? And hopefully they're updating me a little bit somehow, either with availability or an email with what's going on. That's kind of what I request of them, or sometimes they just have a similar schedule all the time. And I kind of know these days are they can do this type of workout and their long runs are Saturday or Sunday or something. And so I'm kind of structuring the week then based off of that information. But that's like one of the first things I look at. And like you said, ChatGPT doesn't do that for you. I mean, I don't think that
Yeah.
it's that sophisticated enough for you to put in your weekly schedule or even like what you've got going on and be able to like tailor things to that. So that's usually where I start. And then when I'm looking at the week, I'm thinking of the kind of the key workouts that I want to, key components that I kind of want to include in the week. And for runners, at least, and it gets, I think, a little bit more complicated maybe for triathletes. So you can weigh in. But I usually like to include one like long run, or I suppose for like a triathlete, maybe that would be like a long bike ride or a brick session. But I like to include for my runners or marathon runners, especially, like it's going to have a long run of some sort in there.
Yeah.
The duration of the long run will be dependent on where they're at with their training. If it's in the beginning, obviously it won't be as long, but as they get towards the marathon, it might be as much as 20 miles. So that's the one component, and I'm trying to fit that in usually on a weekend. And then I'm trying to get at least one or ideally two quality workouts in the week. So that could be intervals, it could be like tempo, threshold, some sort of something where they're going to be picking up the pace a little bit. And maybe those are like the more challenging days. And then I'm trying to, in between that, include recovery days, rest days, or easy days to kind of fill in the rest to either get them to the volume they need to be at, or I'm also thinking about strength training and how that's going to fit in. So it's kind of like a little puzzle, almost like you're trying to look at the days, look at the availability, and you're trying to get those key workouts in and then kind of filling in the rest. Anyway, that's how I usually, just overview of kind of how I'm going about that. But I don't know, I'd be curious if you have a similar system or if it's
Yeah. So
different.
let me follow up. Let me follow up a question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned the strength training, which is excellent because that is exactly where I wanted to go. Um, when you build your plan, either it's your personal plan or the plan for an athlete that you're working with, what do you start with? Do you start with, okay, I'm going to build the run plan first, and then I go in and insert the strength workouts that will support that run plan? Or do you start with the strength stuff and then you pepper in the runs around the strength training? How
No,
do
I
you
do
think
the
about it?
running first. Like
Yeah,
I put, because
good.
that's the most important thing, for most people is what they're doing for running. And then I'm thinking about the strength. I think strength training is important, but I think it can be a little bit tricky because, I don't want to do a strength training maybe the day before a really hard session or like a really long run because it fatigues my muscles. And sometimes I'll do it just because maybe that's the purpose almost. Sometimes I want to go into a run, like maybe a tempo run where I'm going to be pushing the pace, but it's not something that I'm going to feel the fatigue, but it's not something that's going to, the strength training won't completely wreck my workout. Like I might do it strategically, but I've even done it where I've strength trained before a harder workout in the intention of being tired. But most of the time, the goal is to go into each of those key sessions feeling as fresh as possible, which, can be hard when you're training in a lot of mileage or training for a marathon.
Uh,
The way I try to do it if I can is, either schedule it on the same day as a quality workout because you're already you're already kind of pushing it. Like I found I can still do strength training. I try to push the timing like as I try not to back them one after another. I try to like do the run in the morning and then do the strength training later in the day. So there's some recovery there. Or if I have an athlete with like 2 recovery days after a hard session, like I might put the strength training on the
mhm,
second day, like the day after the hard training session. So they have one full day of recovery before the
mhm.
next hard session. So I'm kind of thinking about it like that, but I always put in the runs first and then and then the strength training because that's kind of like the supportive secondary thing that comes in
Right.
second. And then obviously like I'm not as worried about arm days. Like I'll do arm strength I guess for
Yeah.
like swimming, maybe you would have to worry about that. For
Yep.
running, if your arms are a little tired, I don't know. It might make a little difference, but it's not going to like, unless you're extremely fatigued or sore from your workout, I don't think it makes a big difference. So yeah, that's kind of how I think about it. I think it's just, yeah, if anyone's ever done strength training, and sometimes I get this wrong and I still overdo the strength training, then I'm sore for like 2 or 3 days after, and I still then it still gets me, but I try to be as strategic. I don't know, is that how you do it? Do you kinda think about it
Yeah,
that way, or how are
I
you?
start with the aerobic stuff
Mm,
first. Um,
right.
I mean, I do have some athletes that are just single sport, and so it sometimes feel like they're a little bit easier
Mhm.
to build the training plans for because there's not so many moving parts. But
Right.
triathlon can be really, really. There has to be a lot of thought that goes into how we create that and what we pair together and what we sequence uh, behind each other. So it's a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more thought provoking, and
Mhm.
you have to be purposeful when you kind of go through that plan creation. But one of the things that I've been toying with the idea of is if I have an athlete who really can't stack on the volume of their particular sport. So let's just use me for an example. I cannot really carry on a whole lot of run volume because my
Mhm.
body just breaks down and I cannot seem to absorb it. So one of the things that I'm toying with is the idea is since I can't carry a whole lot of run fatigue, if I can increase the fatigue in the weight room, it might. I'm kind of curious on how the body responds to that as I go into the runs
Mm.
really fatigued from the strength training and whether that's really going to prepare me for race day in order to manage that fatigue during the race because I don't think that the body really understands and really differentiates fatigue just like it doesn't
Mhm.
differentiate stress. All it knows is that it's under stress. Fatigue just knows that the body is tired. It
Mhm.
doesn't I'm not quite sure if it knows the source of why it's tired.
Right.
So if I really go
Yeah.
in and do a hard leg session on one day, and then knowing that DOMS takes a while for it to kind of show up, and it really kind of shows up not the day after, but that second day, if I kind of go in with maybe a tempo workout on that second day, I'm going in fatigued on whether that's helpful for me. But then
Right.
it kind of starts to make me question. It's like, okay, well, if I'm really going into it fatigued from the weight room, what does that do for my ability to hold good form? Am I really kind of exposing risk in that way? So again, I think this is a good illustration on the stuff that we have to consider and keep in
Right.
mind. It's like, okay, well, I'm
Mhm.
fatigued from the weight room, but it does have a direct impact on my ability to hold form and run well. Um,
Like I said, I've done that before where I'll do like heavy deadlift, like a deadlifts, back squats, go out and do a run. I'm not usually trying to do like a quality run. It's usually just more of like a aerobic, easy or
okay, yeah.
moderate run.
Done
And
too.
so I think because I think that's where you could get in trouble maybe is if, because I think you do have to be a little bit more aware of form maybe when you're
Mm.
doing that, just kind of like be self aware of things that are starting to break down. And I think if you were to try to go into that and then do, like, speed work, I would think maybe that would take an
Yeah.
athlete who had a lot of comfort, I don't know, or just, like, a lot of experience with that because that's, I think, where the form could really deteriorate. And, when you are doing s when you p increase your speed, that's generally when the risk for injury goes up. So I think that you could maybe be onto something. I mean, I will do the strength and then literally go right out, like, maybe have a little bit of something to eat, and then
Yeah.
go right into a run, and it is fatiguing for sure. Like, my legs are, like, kinda jello-ish, but, I find that helpful because it is almost like you're kind of feeling like it would feel in the later parts of, like, a half marathon or a marathon when your legs are kind of feeling a little bit, like,
Yeah.
wobbly or something, but you just have to be careful. I wouldn't do that all the time, but if you incorporated that, like, once a week, it could be a way to, just kinda get used to that sort of fatigue. Yeah, I don't know. It might be something I would consider, but I don't know if I would do that for someone who is just starting into
Yeah.
running or
That's true.
into triathlon. I would maybe do that with more of an advanced runner who, is more able to check in with their body and make sure they perform, kind of being like, okay, am I starting to bend over a little bit weird or am I limping, kind of those things where you can check in, but I don't know. I think
Yeah.
this
So
is where it's fun because you can kinda utilize different strategies, and that's where I think, again, something like ChatGPT maybe wouldn't have the sophistication to be able to even think about, like, put where to put the strength training, so that you're not fatigued, and or, like, maybe even think to do a session like that where you use pre-fatigue, and there's, like, definitely things like that I think could be beneficial that, maybe as coaches, those are things we're maybe thinking of more of how we're gonna adjust the stimuli, tinker a little bit with when is it appropriate to do back-to-back hard days? That's something we don't
mm,
do very often, but there may be a point where you do for certain people, like double lactate sort of day or like a double I mean, threshold day is what I meant, and or like back-to-back hard days in a very strategic, thought out manner, to maybe help them, almost like in a special I've heard it sort of stated as like a special block of training where maybe there's a particular week where you're doing something like that to help
mhm.
them be able to manage fatigue a little bit when it get the going gets tough. So there's certain things like that I mean, this is advanced stuff, but I think that's where, something like ChatGPT wouldn't get it right because it's just kinda giving, like, a blanket program, probably based off whatever it's finding on the internet. I don't know how it even generates.
Yeah, you have to be really purposeful on the prompts that you come up
Oh,
with
I see. Okay,
for
I've
it. I've
never
been
tried.
toying with it. Yeah, I've been
Okay.
toying with it, not for my athlete training plan, but for my own personal ones.
Okay.
I've been kind of just playing with the prompts and say, hey, I want you to create for me this 8-week training plan. These are, and I fed it my injury history. I fed it, how many runs I wanted to do, my weekly training volume. So I sent it in like a spreadsheet of like 8 rows, and it just had the total minutes for each week. And I said,
Mhm.
this is my training volume for each week. This is my injury history. This is the stuff that I'm dealing with. Build me a training plan that fits these parameters. But if you don't know what questions to ask,
Right.
then
Absolutely.
that's where these AI based platforms really fall apart.
Right.
So you really have to have that understanding and that experience from the stuff that we talked about in the first 2 episodes on what to consider, and
Mhm.
outside before we even start talking about workouts, in order to really get the output that you want from these AI based platforms. So I
Makes
think
sense,
it
yeah.
can be smart enough, but it's only as smart as the information that you provided,
That
is
makes
what
sense,
I'm
yeah.
finding.
So you'd really have to be able to put in a
Yeah,
lot of information to get it.
you
Because if you're
do.
just like, "Make me a training plan for a 5K in 6 weeks," and it's just very general, it's probably
Yep.
just like pulling a general plan for you. It's not gonna
Yeah.
even attempt to make it individuals. I think there's probably could be benefit to that, but again, I mean, I'm just even thinking, like, I don't know when you're putting that in there, how it's even thinking about volume, like, week 2 is you'd have to must be so specific because, as a
Yep.
coach, we're, like, thinking of the volume, like, my volume is going up. I have 3 weeks in a row. Last week, it was, like, 65 miles. This week will be, like, 66 or 67 and then 70, and then it's a down week. I have kind of, like, then a cut back week a little bit. It doesn't cut back maybe to, like, 50 miles, and then I kind of build it up again, and it just helps me. I have I re you're building up fatigue, and then it kind of is nice to have that little bit of a reprieve so you can be, okay, I can sort of see some of that fitness and then start working again, and it just gives the body a break, but I don't know, I'm trying to think. I guess I've never used ChatGPT, so I'd wonder if it would be able to even think of it like that or if it's just kinda creating you
Yeah,
a
I'm
plan
not
where
sure if
week
it
to
would
week
build
it
in like
just
rollback weeks.
yeah.
I think some of the stuff that I've seen come from it is that they do have like some reprieve. So I think
Mm,
there is some rollback, that it would throw in there, but uh, I don't know whether it's very
yeah.
consistent or
Or how
not,
it's,
but it's
like,
very
thinking about it or
generalized.
how it's
The main reason that I started playing with it is because I just wanted different workout ideas.
mm.
'Cause I mean,
Yeah,
there
makes
comes a
sense.
point where we as coaches, we keep recycling the same workouts over and over and over again, and which is not there's nothing wrong with that because, that's a great way to do it because then you have a time series of the same workout so you can measure progress. If you keep always doing new workouts, it's hard to kinda build a gauge as to where you are in your fitness adaptation if you keep changing things, and there's no real true like benchmark to see, how
Uh-huh.
you've progressed. And so, but there comes a time where I just want some new ideas.
Right.
It's some stuff that's just getting stale. It's like, I want to see some different run workouts, some different bike workouts that it spits out. And I was like, oh, I never would have come up with that workout. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in my plan. Let's just execute it and see how it feels, whether I like
Sure.
it, whether, if I'm getting the results that I think that I want out of it, and whether I know that any of my athletes would benefit from it, then I add it to the library of stuff that I can pull from. But I was just doing it just to
See what
broaden
it
my
would be. Yeah,
horizons and see what
makes
else
sense.
we can get.
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes I guess I have Googled like good, good 5K workout, like just for that reason.
yeah,
Like I want some ideas for like the 5K workouts because I was for a while really focused on 5K training. So I was like, yeah, I just wanted to see what was on there and what ideas. So I have kind of done, I haven't like had it create a training plan. It's more just like searching for ideas. And that's kind of why I like to every once in a while, like purchase different training books. Like I think I mentioned in one of my Road to Grandma's episodes, the Marathon Excellence for Everyone was one that I had
mhm,
recently got. And he has a lot of different workouts in there for the marathon, and he sets it based off of different volume goals. So there's like different training plans in there for different volume goals. And I'm not following the training plan. I mean, I'm doing a lot of my own stuff that I need, but I took
mhm,
some
yeah,
ideas from the workouts in there because I liked the philosophy. I liked some of the things that he had obviously put a lot of work into that book. So I was like, okay, I'm going to pull from this a little bit, try some different workouts that I haven't tried or reincorporate workouts that I've maybe done before, but he had in there. And I'm like, oh, I remember like, that's a great workout. I'm going to do that one. Yeah. Anyway, I think that,
yeah. So,
yeah, there's
but
different
the
ways,
but the one
ways to
thing
get workout ideas, but
Yeah.
yeah,
The one thing that I will not do is I won't allow Chat GPT to tell me the sequencing of the workouts.
right.
And so that's why I wanted to bring this piece in. And when we start talking about AI based platforms, I think it's a good, valid source to find new ideas and new workout structures. But n- there's more to it. I think that there's more from the coaching perspective. It's like, okay, now that I've got these different ideas and maybe workouts that I never really thought about, I'm still going to rely on my experience, my wisdom, and my training to know how to put these together. Yeah,
For where the person's at in their training and
true.
where, what they're training for. Like, I was looking specifically for 5K training, workouts, but, like, I might have done that kind of in the very initial phase, maybe back in early March or late February when I was still just sort of working on some speed before I got into my marathon training, but now things are progressing where I'm not doing as much of that, like, 5K that sort of higher end speed. So I wouldn't say like, "Oh, I'm gonna do a 5K, workout 2 weeks out from my marathon." So that's like,
Right.
I think knowing the workouts that are appropriate for the time,
Mhm.
for where the athlete is in their training and what they're training for is also important. So kind of thinking about those workouts that are gonna help them get to their goal, because there are so many workouts you can do, but knowing like the what that workout like is supposed to be doing like from a physiological standpoint and then no, maybe you do have an athlete that needs to work on speed and so but maybe they're also not needing to work on speed, they need to work on, like, lactate threshold, or maybe they would benefit from endurance. They just really lack in, like, endurance, and you need to just put in more of those, like, longer, grindier sessions, So, it's,
Mhm.
kinda knowing the person, and I think that's where also I kinda wonder where ChatGPT or something or even yeah, like Rana or some of those programs that are more, like, based off of, I think, AI, like, maybe if you put in there, "My weakness is speed," or would they be able to kind of even tailor the actual workouts to be able to work on your
Yeah.
weaknesses or what you really need to be working on? And I think as a coach, that's something that you get from the athletes as you're working with them and or asking them those questions when you first meet is, "Oh, it sounds like you really have great endurance, but I think you would really benefit from working on more speed and kind of getting some of that higher end speed, then you'll be able to get faster, at that half marathon eventually. But we want to work on this for a little while.
I've fed it what I want to work on. So
Right.
I had it create a cycling training plan. So I said, like the first one that I did, I said, I want you to build a plan that will focus on speed. And so it was really kind of like a lot of threshold stuff, a lot of high cadence driven work. And then the next block, I said, well, now I want to work on muscular endurance. And so it changed the shift. But
Right. You
one
would
of the
have
things that
to
I
know
did,
that that's what you want to work on, though.
yes,
Mhm.
exactly. And the one thing that I wanted to bring up is that there's more than one way to focus on these things that we want to improve on. So I can almost guarantee that an athlete would go out to ChatGPT and say, I want to work on speed. And I can almost say that fairly certain that they're going to have, track Tuesday kind of workouts in there where they're doing, intervals. But let's say that you're in your upper 50s
Okay.
and, the question is like, okay, is that a reasonable workout to give you? Because there's a cost to that workout and your ability to recover from that workout, or if you even have the foundations that are necessary in order to execute that workout properly. There's more than one way to build speed, and it doesn't have to always come from track sessions.
Right.
And I was
Yeah.
having this conversation with another athlete, and they said, hey, I'm working on getting faster, and so I'm doing these, 400s and 200s, and I was just like, but why are you doing these? And they couldn't really say. It's like, well, this is just what was in the training plan. So I was like, well, somebody at your age and your ability to recover and adapt, you'd almost be better off with doing fartlek style workouts with some strides at the end of your run to work on that higher cadence, that turnover rate
Mhm.
of your feet. A lot easier to recover from. You now don't have to take several days off. You have now minimized your risk because of the run form that you're going to execute on that track is going to be very different than the run form that you're going to hold during your race, and whether you have the foundation to hold that even during the track workout, and what's going to be the fatigue level, and what's the risk portfolio associated with that workout. Is it appropriate for you? And it may not be,
Mhm.
but there's another way for us to approach it that would offset some of that risk, and you still get the same benefits. It may not be, one to one in terms of like your adaptation, because, just doing strides is not going to be a perfect substitute for doing, interval based workouts. But it is appropriate for particular athletes with a particular scenario that they're under, and different body types and different abilities and where they are in their journey.
Well, I mean, I
So,
think the like you mentioned, the fartlek style workouts, literally like a fartlek, like it's like from this pole to that pole. I'm gonna try to,
mhm.
bring the speed up a little bit. And then I'm like, so, um, but maybe you're not like, and I also think when you're doing the track workouts, I don't necessarily have a problem with someone doing track workouts. I just think they need to have, it's not like maybe they don't need to go like all out for every
Which is
four.
what they do.
Well, yeah, that's the
Yeah.
the problem is,
Yeah.
like, the pacing needs to be a discussion, like, you
Yeah.
don't need to do it like you're doing an all-out 200 and try to do that as fast as possible. That's not the goal, because yeah, that's gonna fatigue you real fast, and that's what maybe will lead to injury. It's like, okay, yeah, you can go out and do 10 or whatever, maybe 6 to 10 400s, but let's talk about what your goal for those 400s would be. Like, we want it to be speedy. They're not supposed to be all out, and I think that's where
Yeah.
people kind of get into trouble. And I mean, is a race going to be on a track? I love doing track sessions, but I've kind of moved away from doing a lot of track work recently because, first of all, I just don't have access to a track as easily as I used to. And my marathon isn't even on a track. I'm not doing any track races right now, so a lot of my workouts are just like on the bike path or like a hilly terrain. And yes, that slows down my pace a little bit, but it's more like realistic to what I'm going to be doing. It's not on a track. So I just think also like it isn't necessary. I think people think they've got to do track Tuesday. The track itself, I think it's hard not to try to go all out. I think pacing can be an issue. And also you're going around that curve. And I think just like an injury, from having to go around the curve and if that you're always
Mhm.
going the same direction, I think there is a
Yes.
risk there too. So just kind of also think you don't have to do track workouts, unless you absolutely love them and just love being on the track all the time and can easily get to a track. So, yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with you. There's other ways you can do it and maybe safer ways and a little bit more fun, to be out on a road or something doing it
Yeah.
where you're seeing other things and you're not just going around in circles. Could be a little bit more interesting anyway.
Yeah, so I think that this discussion that we're having is illustrating the one foundation concept that I really wanted to make sure that we bring out is that when you're looking at your week, you have to think in terms of what are the costs associated with this particular workout. Look at just a single workout and what is that going to cost me? And what am I going to get a return as off of a return from that workout? Because you you can't look at workouts in a siloed, like blinders on viewpoint. You have
Right.
to look at it in terms of big picture, because unless you're only going to do that one workout and you're not going to do any other workouts on the days to come, then yeah, maybe you can look at it in terms of I'm just focusing on this one workout. But we know that consistency is what builds adaptation and performance over time. So we have to think about in terms of what am I doing today? What did I do yesterday? And what am I doing tomorrow?
Mhm.
That's how you look at your weekly distribution of training volume, because fatigue accumulates over the week. It's a cumulative process, which is why we put in things like taper periods before a race. We put in things like rollback weeks. Is that management of fatigue, because it accumulates. What I find is that many athletes will come to me and said, I've been running or I've been training for this long and I'm getting slower and I'm getting slower and my legs feel heavy. And really what is going on is that they're not losing fitness. They're just not managing their fatigue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So fatigue is not a bad thing. It's what you want. It's what we're striving for, because fatigue is what brings about adaptation. And we start to see our fitness gains when we shed the fatigue. So fatigue masks fitness.
Right.
So we shed the fatigue in order to get a true representation of what our fitness is at that particular time. Where athletes start to fall apart is when they don't manage that fatigue. So it's the unmanaged fatigue is what leads to this breakdown. And then they start to say, well, I'm now losing fitness. I'm getting slower. I don't understand this. And their first thought is, oh, I need to do more. I need to do more because I'm not making progress. So now I need to do more track works. I need to do more speed works. I need to put in more sessions. And all that does is it just snowballs and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they either get burned out or they get hurt.
Right. And I think
So,
along with that, kind of one major thing that I see with people is taking your recovery and your easy days easy. Like it seems like a simple thing, but it's not. People do not do not do this, and that's what if they have a training plan that's incorporating hard workouts and recovery days, like what's the point of running hard on your recovery day if that means you're going into your next workout feeling fatigued, and then you're not going to, that's what's happening most of the time. Sometimes it's just that they're doing too many hard workouts back to back, but part of it is that they have a plan that has recovery days and easy days set in there. Easy running days, or when I say recovery, it could be like a day off, or it could just be like a literal like recovery run or recovery bike or what recovery swim or whatever that recovery day entails. But they are too worried about how their data is going to look on Strava, or that's probably the biggest problem I'm seeing now is nobody wants to look slow on Strava, so they're trying to be like a hero every day, and they're out there trying to hit a certain pace. And I can't say, like, I feel like I've been guilty of that in the past. That's probably what got me into trouble for the California International Marathon years ago when I did that. Just not taking my easy days seriously and trying to be a hero every day I'm out there. And at the time, they didn't have Strava, so I don't even know. I don't think so. I just think I just thought I was better, or that I didn't need recovery days. And that was like my biggest regret, my biggest mistake that I've made is And that could stem from college days when it seemed like there was like the mentality was just run until you're injured, or like whoever's left standing at the end of
Mhm.
the season gets to go on to, nationals or whatever. That's just my experience with that, coach in college. So I had this mentality still stuck with me that, easy days are for people who, can't, I don't know, who aren't strong enough, the weak, And so
Yeah.
don't don't fall into that trap. That's what's happening. You just accumulate fatigue day to day. You're never recovering adequately. Then when you go into those quality sessions, you're just unable to complete the session, and you're getting slower and slower. You need to pay attention to that. And if that means for me, some days when I'm on a recovery run after like a really hard workout, I'm just kind of going along real slow and easy. And I'm literally just taking it nice and easy, and it's comfortable. And my heart rate's, relatively low, and I'm just basically moving. It's not moving fast. And that's exactly where I want to be. I don't care what it looks like on Strava, because when I do my workouts, if I've done that correctly, they are going to be quality and I'm going to feel good. I mean, I'm not always going to feel great because I'm marathon training, but I'm at least going to be able to hit the session most of the time and feel pretty good about it and be able to hit my paces. So I think that's probably the biggest mistake I see, is just either stacking on too many hard training days, either back to back, or
Mhm.
trying to fit like 3 hard days or 4 hard days or 3 hard days in the long run in, or so trying to get more in there, thinking more is better, or just not taking the easy days and the recovery days seriously. So that's my 2 cents on that piece.
No,
Um,
yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's where the popularity of like training methodologies like the 80-20 method, where they really kind of like
mhm,
stepped in to try and introduce this concept of, hey, this is not a warrior mentality. You're not going to go out and throw down, 100% effort every single time. And I will tell you that I've fallen victim to this kind of mindset as well, where I know that I've put in, just like if I say it's a zone 2 run and I put it in my training plan, and if I'm executing that workout at a pace that is slower where I think that my zone 2 should be, then my mind starts to snowball a little bit, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm not running as fast as I usually am, and the effort level. Am I losing fitness? Am I stacking on too much fatigue?" And then my initial thought is, "Well, I need to go faster." And so I
mm,
pick up the intensity,
interesting.
and then I sabotage my easy days
Mhm,
that way. In this training block that I'm going through now, I'm being very purposeful with it. And even though I know like what my zone 2 range is, for what I'm now calling my easy days, I'm trying to learn to be comfortable going at the low end of that zone 2
right.
and being okay with being in zone 1. There's nothing wrong with zone 1. It's not a regression. And I'm telling you this because I'm having to learn this myself, so I'm preaching to the choir here as well. So this is a method. This is something that I'm having to learn even after being in the sport for this long, and having all the certifications and everything else. So I still get it wrong. And so I'm trying to tell myself, look, it's okay to be in zone 1, and it's okay to be at the very low end of zone 2. If I say I have a zone 2 run, I don't have to automatically go to the max of that zone 2. I don't have to aim for the mid range of zone 2, just so that I feel like I'm not regressing, or that I'm at least maintaining and making progress. I'm not regressing, so it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and I'm owning the struggle as well.
Mhm,
Now, the reason that I want to bring this up is that the methods like 80-20, I think they're popular methods, but I don't want people to think that it's like a law. It's not like the law of gravity,
right.
where we have to like 80% must represent our zone 2 training in order to make progress. It's it's a method, and I don't want to call it a sales pitch because there's a little bit of science behind it. But if you go back and you read like how this method was developed in the first place,
Mhm,
I think it would give you a little bit more insight. But I can say that I don't follow an 80-20 method. And a lot of my athletes don't follow 80-20 methods. Do we have easy days in there? Absolutely. Do we have hard days in there? Yeah. Do we have moderate, like tempo stuff? Yes.
Mhm.
There is an appropriateness for all these zones. If you come back and you say, well, you're in the gray zone, so we need to stay out of zone 3. Well, the reason that they call it this is because people were staying in this zone for every single run. So they were
Always there, yeah.
they were not managing their fatigue. And so when they were asked to go into zone 4 and do some threshold stuff, they couldn't because they had too much fatigue that was stacked on because they were going too hard too often.
Mhm.
And so this fear of this gray zone or this zone 3 is ridiculous because there is aerobic adaptation that
Right.
takes place in zone 3. It's
Right.
called the tempo zone for a reason.
Right.
And runners have tempo workouts in there. Cyclists, we have tempo workouts. We swim at tempo efforts. There is adaptation that we want from that zone. Do we want every single workout to be there because you feel like you have to be there so that you don't feel like you're regressing? That's the issue
Right.
that the 80-20 tried to resolve. It was
Right.
forcing them to go a little bit easier so that they were on both sides of the extremes in the spectrum rather than kind of staying in the middle
All
and
the time.
sabotaging it
Yeah.
all.
I think you're right. You have to listen to your body too. Like if you're like taking it easy and then you're like, oh, this is too easy. I shouldn't be going so slow. And you're trying to push yourself and you're feeling like that's hard. That's how it usually feels
Mhm.
for me if I'm on a recut, like an easy day after a hard workout and I'm trying to pick up the pace. I'm struggling a little bit, like listen to your body. If you're doing it right, I mean, you shouldn't be totally wiped out the next day and unable to move. But if you're doing your more challenging days correctly, you should feel pretty tired the next day. It
Yeah.
maybe won't feel actually super easy. Generally, when you start out, you'll probably have a little bit of soreness. You're even going into zone 2 might be a little bit of a struggle, listen to your body. That means it's perfectly okay to just kind of go real slow and easy. You're still moving. In fact, getting that blood flow and getting your heart rate up just a little bit will help aid your recovery. I learned a very hard lesson with trying always being in the gray zone, always going hard and hardly ever taking it easy. I mean, I don't know this for sure. I'm pretty sure it triggered my Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disease. Like you push your body too hard and you never like recover. First of all, your race is going to go terribly. I'm just going to promise you that.
Yeah.
Like it did with me. It was one of my worst marathon. And secondly, it could put you in a place. I'm very lucky that I was able to come back from that and able to continue training. But now I have to be very careful. So it's definitely been a learning lesson. But you don't want to push your body to a point that it you cause some sort of outcome that's not so great because you've had
Yeah.
all these stressors and you're not listening. Like you said, the 80-20, that's I think yeah, I don't always agree that that's exactly what someone's running should look like, but I think it's helped to help people understand that they need to be a little more in that zone too, and
Yeah.
they need to take it easy more. So, the other thing I wanted to mention too, just kind of thinking about this whole concept of a week, is that your training plan doesn't have to be exactly like the cycle doesn't have to be 7 days. It could be
Thank
like
you.
you have an 8 or 10-day
Yeah.
cycle. I mean, like, because maybe as a master's athlete, so I'm thinking of like, you know, I have a friend I run with who's like 63 and he just can't do the same amount of volume and it takes him more time to recover in between his workouts. So he has these ambitious goals, but it's like somebody like that may benefit from having a couple recovery days in between. So maybe having, a plan that is like 8 days. I know that makes it hard
Yeah.
because not all of us can do our long run on a Tuesday or whatever, but that might be something to consider too, is it doesn't always have to be 7 days. You can give yourself maybe a little more time to train for that marathon and have your weekly cycle be more like an 8-day cycle instead of exactly seven
Yeah.
days and then allowing a little bit more recovery in between. Yeah, I would if I was gonna do that, I would maybe like have somebody do like 20-week. It wouldn't work as well for like 12 weeks out from a marathon. So giving yourself a little bit more leeway, but that's also possible. You don't have to do exactly 7 days. So just something I also want to point out especially works well, I think more for, like, masters runners who just unfortunately, as we age, we do need a little bit more recovery. I don't have a lot of masters runners I've worked with, and at this point, I'm still doing okay with my 7-day training cycle, so I haven't had to do something like this, but I'm curious if you've ever implemented anything like that, Justin, where you've kind of had more.
I know that I've talked with older athletes about that. I've personally never worked with an athlete,
Uh-huh.
and we've never like implemented this, but I have talked with several older athletes that would come to me. It's like, I'm really kind of struggling recovering from sessions, and I don't know how to adapt. And so I would always bring up this idea. It's like, okay, well, who says that you have to have a 7-day plan? It doesn't have to go from Monday to Sunday.
Mhm.
So I do sell them on this idea. It's like, do a 10-day cycle where you're doing your long run or your long sessions, whatever your sport is. That long session is every 10 days rather than every 7 days. And it does allow, especially for triathletes, because we're carrying so much volume, especially long course athletes, that it's really hard to get the number of sessions that we want or that we feel like we need in the span of 7 days, because we have three sports that we're trying to master. Now we're talking about, okay, now I have to throw in strength training. So now there's four disciplines that we're
Mhm.
trying to incorporate into a training plan, and that's in 7 days. And we all are not professionals, so we do have other demands on our
Right.
time. So unless you have the ability to do like 3 training sessions a day, I don't come across many athletes that have that
Mhm.
freedom to be able to do that. And so building that 10-day plan allows us to have these extra sessions and spread them out over a longer period of time to allow for a little bit more recovery. I have thought about doing it in my own training plan, actually, because the way that my body responds to running volume, I have a hard time recovering from it. So I've thought about, maybe I should toy around with the idea of doing a 10-day training plan just for my run.
Mm.
Still stick with 7-day plan for my swim and my bike, but spread my run volume over 10 days rather than 7 days and kind of see what happens. But it would be a total experiment. And I'm kind of a mad scientist when it comes to my training plan
Yeah.
before I implement it
You're like, "Yeah, I
into
think, yeah,
somebody
that's how I
else's.
feel about it. Maybe I'd wanna
Yeah.
try it on myself doing
I
that."
want to know. I
Like,
want to know the nuances before I
yeah.
try and sell it to somebody. It's like, hey, this
Yeah, I
works.
would
Yeah,
I think my
I don't.
biggest
I don't know.
the hardest thing for me would be the long run falling in weird days because, I
Yeah.
think for most people who work, like a job, like, no one's gonna get up at 3 to do their 3-hour 20-miler on a Tuesday, so you'd have to have some flexibility in your schedule to really make that work. I mean, I could maybe do it, but, in general, like, I have someone that runs with me on Sundays, so having, like, a training partner to run with me that's a big thing, is having people to run with sometimes,
Mhm.
and that might be something too that like, I have an athlete who there's, like, a Tuesday night workout thing they do in Fort Collins, and she likes to go to those, so if I check out the workout and make sure it's appropriate, but if it's like, "Yeah, well, you'll need to add some things on," or, "I want you to do this," but she'll do that, and that's because I know that sometimes we run a little bit faster around other people. It's nice to have that social piece, so that's another thing ChatGPT wouldn't be able to like, if there's a specific social run or something that someone wants to do, and I think that's common for people to have their long run be with, like, other people, so that would make it hard to maybe implement that, but if you had the flexibility to do that, personally, the way I manage it is I will do like, last week was my long run, and then this week it isn't as long, and then I do a long like, a 20-miler. I could have those alternate weeks where it's really long, and then it cuts back a little bit. Um, I had to then I would maybe consider that, but for now, yeah, I mean, maybe someday I will try that as I get a little older. It's a little easier if your long run's only 10 miles, um, versus
Yeah.
20, so it could work maybe well for a triathlete who's, I don't know, I mean, maybe not an Ironman, but somebody just trying to, maybe their longest run is like 8 or 10. That could be a good way to do it. Um, yeah, I think it's definitely something I would be worth if I had an athlete that I thought needed a little more recovery, be definitely something I would explore, maybe kind of implement, as long as it kind of worked for their schedule. The other thing I was thinking of, I mean, I was kind of thinking in terms of running, like something I'm doing right now is implementing cross training days. I mean, pretty much for triathlon, there's it's like always you have the three sports, so you're
Yeah.
not going to add another like elliptical. I mean, unless you're like injured from running and maybe you're doing some elliptical type of work to like be able to have that similar stimulus. Most triathletes are
Mhm.
not adding in more. So this is kind of more specific to running, but I know some people might be like, when do we add the cross training? Like if I'm going to do an elliptical workout, like when would I do that? And I don't know. I'll tell you what I think, and then I want to hear what you have to say. But for me, because that's a lot less pounding, you're on the elliptical machine. It's a lot easier on your body. I usually don't do them on my hard days in addition to, but I usually do. I've been trying to implement like a couple elliptical sessions a week of 20 to 30 minutes. So nothing like profound, but it's just a little bit of extra volume. I try to keep my heart rate in, high zone 2, maybe low like zone 3, so it's
Mm.
not easy. But I found that I can add on that stimulus after like maybe an easier run. And because it's not so hard on my body and my muscles, I can actually do it a little bit harder. I'm not doing like really hard zone 4 or anything, but I'm just getting my heart rate up a little bit. I've actually found that that hasn't really detracted much from my my maybe adds a little bit of fatigue because it's still an exercise that I'm doing. I'm still adding on, but by doing it on my
Yeah.
easier days, maybe not the day right before a hard workout. I've been trying to kind of be strategic about how I add that in. Actually finding that so far it's been manageable. But I'm just curious if you have a runner that's like, I want to add some elliptical just to get extra volume without, so I don't add to the injury risk by increasing run volume. What would you do for that person in terms of the cross training piece? Whether it's elliptical or
Yeah, I do
swimming or
have
I don't know, anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
I have one athlete who is a single sport athlete, so she's a runner. Um, I've been trying to get her to do the elliptical. Um, she lives in an area where she's got like a neighborhood gym, but the elliptical's been broken for what seems to be
Mhm.
forever now. And so they fail to fix the elliptical. But it's the one thing that I've been wanting to put into her plan
Right.
because uh when we try to start stacking on volume, she's got some leg issues that we have to continue to manage. And it's a great alternative, and it's something that I personally have in my own plan. So I'll speak in terms of how I implement it in mine, since I really don't have an athlete that I'm actively using that method with.
Right.
Um, so I do put them on days where I have short runs.
Mhm.
And the reason that I do that is because I spend the effort to go to the gym, um, because I don't typically run outside a whole lot because of the stress that it does put on my body. So I do enjoy the treadmill. I'm very purposeful with the treadmill, and I know how to use it. I'm just not getting on there and just setting it and forgetting
Mhm.
it. So I do that. And because some of my runs tend to be a little bit of short and I want to make the effort to get to the gym worth it, then if I have a 20-minute run, then I'll go straight from the treadmill onto the elliptical and do 40
Mhm.
minutes on the elliptical. So that way I get a full 60
That's
minutes
kind of how
of
I do
aerobic
it. I do it right
conditioning
back to back.
at the
Yeah.
gym.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So will do that. I am purposeful with the elliptical workout. So it's not just, I don't just get on there and,
Just
just pedal
yeah, I get
effectively.
that.
So mine are structured workouts to where I'm changing the
Right.
stride of the workout. So I'll do them in intervals. So it's like either 5 minutes and I'll do a forward stride, and then 5 minutes I reverse the
Hmm.
stride and go backwards. I find that it just engages different muscles. So it really starts to put more emphasis on quads and glutes, and then when you change that stroke, it brings in the hamstrings and glutes, and whether the elevation on the elliptical, if you have one of those that changes, then that will change muscle engagement as well. But I like that because it's entertaining, because I can, it's like, oh well, I only have 5 minutes to do this, and then I change focus and I'm doing something else. And so it keeps me a little bit more entertained. And B, I get the better muscular engagement and it's more well rounded.
Mhm.
Um, it does limit the impact. So you have metabolic stress, right? Which is like
Mhm.
the aerobic stress that you put onto your body. The body doesn't differentiate between like stress sources, but there are different types of stress that will generate a different kind of response. And so, you have the mechanical stress, which is what we experience when we're running
Right.
and
Like
cycling and all
outside,
that kind of
yeah.
stuff. It's
Pounding.
the demands on that particular muscle, whether it's an impact based
Mhm.
sport or non-impact based sport. Those are still mechanical stress. And then you have the metabolic stress is, the aerobic stress that you're putting on. So it's the stress on your heart and your lungs, that type of stress. And so managing all of those in order to keep us moving forward does take some focus and some purposeful intent behind it. And so using these cross training sessions is a great way to relieve some of the mechanical stress while still allowing the body to take on more metabolic stress. And so that's the way that I view it. They are useful tools. I don't have just days where I'm on the elliptical. It's usually as a supplement
Mhm.
to whatever my primary purpose is for that day. Um, and that's especially true if I'm actively training for something.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if this is like the off season and, I may throw on an elliptical session during the off season, have it follow a weight session. And so I'll go in and I'll do a strength session and then I'll come out and jump on the elliptical for, 30 to 40 minutes just to get my heart rate up a little bit because your heart rate doesn't really rise during strength training as much as it does during an aerobic session. So it's just a different kind of stress that I want to introduce. And it's entertaining and it doesn't really take away from my focus because I don't really have a whole lot of focus during the off
Mhm.
season unless I'm like building strength or whatever. And so it's just a nice change of pace to where I'm not always running. I'm not
Plus, you
always
can do it
cycling. It's
inside, so it's nice
like
in
a
the
little mental break.
like in the winter or something like that. But I think
Yeah.
for me it's just supplementary. For me, it's just a way to add some volume without because I found in my last marathon training cycle that once I kind of got to a certain volume, I was starting. It was getting harder to add more volume of just running. Like the mechanical
Hmm.
stress was getting too much. I'm like, okay, what happens if I sort of add in, some of the metabolic piece or the aerobic side, and without all that
Yeah.
mechanical stress on the body. So far, it's going well, but yeah, I do think that's always it's always like adding. You have the core plan, and then kind of how you're adding in. Um,
Yeah.
can always be kind of where people tend to have questions or run into trouble, but yeah.
So let's talk about like the sequencing of our
Okay,
workouts. And
just
so
in
this is kind of
yeah.
like the meat and potatoes of this episode. You've mentioned before earlier in the episode where we talked about you'll lay the foundation for the plan, and your foundation is if you're working with a runner, you lay the run workouts and then you add stuff to
Mhm,
that, whether those be strength sessions or whatever the cross training. Those are stuff that you're adding into it after you've already
mhm. The
built
training
the
plan.
core
Right,
focus of
mhm,
the plan. So let's take this another step forward and say, okay, now we're about to build the run plan for that week. What do you focus on first, second, third? How do you build that run
yeah,
plan? And I'll talk about
for
how I
sure.
build the
Triathlon, okay.
triathlon plan.
For the run plan, yeah, like I said, usually there is a specific day someone might do like a long run, so that's kind of the first thing I'm, maybe putting in there, and I might have like on their general like overview of their whole plan because I sometimes will put in almost like a backbone sort of situation where I'm thinking, okay, I'm
Mm.
trying to get them up to a certain like long run distance for their marathon, so I might actually put almost like just an overview in the training peaks. It's just a backbone. There's not any
Yeah.
detail to it. It's just kind of here's where I'd want these long runs to go, and this is kind of how I want them to progress. But anyways, it might always be Sunday. So then, okay. that's generally going to be this day. Then Monday, because of the stress of a long run, usually Monday will be a recovery day of some sort. So either it's a day completely off, depending on the athlete, or very literally that's a recovery workout, really easy, not super long, kind of shorter in duration. And then I might not actually put anything else on that day. It's just going to be like an easy run,
Mhm.
or maybe a day off, or maybe that would be a day for like an elliptical session all by itself or something. But and then depending on the athlete, if they need, sometimes for my marathoners who are doing like a really long workout on Sunday, like a long run, or even like a 20 miler, or even a long run incorporating actual like some speed or race pace stuff. I might also have Tuesday be an easier day. Just might not be like a recovery day. I would call that more an easy day with strides, easy day with hill sprints. But that might be the day, it would either be a workout if the long run wasn't super taxing, or it will be another easy day, but just longer with maybe some strides or hill sprints or some sort of piece in there that isn't super
Yeah.
taxing. They're just getting their legs turnover. And then maybe so the workout will either be Tuesday or Wednesday. Sometimes, there might be a double. Sometimes if I'm having them do like a double workout where they have to do 2 runs or something, I might put that on the hard
Mhm.
day too. So the hard day and then an easy run in the evening, so that then that Thursday would be maybe an easy run, or a recovery, and then Friday usually would be some. So it might depend on how recoverable somebody is, but then Friday might be another workout of some sort, and then Saturday would
Yeah.
be like a recovery or easy, and then Sunday would be their long run. So that's generally how I'm thinking about it. So I'd be putting their strength would, depending on how many days they have in between, strength would be either like Wednesday along with the hard workout, or either Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when their hard workout would be the leg strength. And then I might do like the arm strength on Thursday. If they have another leg strength session, like hard strength, leg strength, I might also do that another one on Friday with their other workout. But that's generally how. I mean, there might be a few instances where I would maybe do strength on like a Monday along with like a recovery day, but it really depends on how long they
Yeah.
went. Because if I do a really long, like 20 miler, it's very hard for me to feel fantastic for strength session on Monday. But when I'm just training for like half marathon or doing shorter stuff, I can most definitely, I could maybe even do a strength session after a long run. But as soon as the long run gets longer than like 12 or 13 miles, it's not a good
Yeah.
idea, I think. I think it's too much mechanical load and too much stress on the body to do those long runs that are longer than that, and strength train all in one day. So that's generally, how I would progress the week. And again, it depends like when I put those workouts in and how the workout is, and how many days after I want the recovery to be. The Sunday long run might dictate that as well. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
And then like the cross training might be like Monday, Thursday. They're pretty simple for the run, I think, for the most part.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think for the triathlon, I do something that's pretty similar. I think I work my way down the intensity pool for it. So what I typically will do is I'll start with wherever their long sessions are going to be. So if I have a long bike, long run, and a long swim, that goes in first. And so I put those on whatever days that I need them, or the athlete needs them to go on, because ultimately it's down to their schedule on whether they can do
Uh-huh.
that. Normally, for me, the best thing would be to have a long run on Saturday and a long ride on Sunday. So that way I'm ensuring that my long ride on Saturday doesn't affect my ability to have a quality long run with good form, because I'm going into it fatigued from the long bike the day
Uh-huh.
before. But the way that my schedule is set up, I don't have availability during the day to do a long ride on Sunday. So it has to
Right.
be on Saturday. And so my long runs, when I have them in the plan, they're on
Uh-huh.
Sundays. Most triathletes will tell you that that's the way that they like it, because they feel like that they have this mindset. It's like, okay, well, I want to learn what it's like to run with fatigued legs, so I want to run on Sundays, and I want to do my long ride on Saturday, so that I'm going into the run
Uh-huh.
tired. Which I have mixed feelings about it.
Right.
Um, Normally I'd say, well, why? Because what does it mean? You don't need to know what it's going to be like to run on tired legs, because as we progress through the training plan, you're going to be tired.
Mhm.
So, a lot of your runs are going to feel like you're running on fatigued legs. So, whether you run on Sunday after you ride on Saturday, so that you feel like you're getting some kind of special adaptation, some neuromuscular adaptation, because you're learning how to run on tired legs. You're going to learn how to run on tired legs eventually in the training plan with every single run that you
Right.
do, because you're going to be tired, because we're accumulating fatigue. That's the whole point of it. But because these long sessions do tend to be kind of demanding in terms of just duration themselves, so I wanted to make sure that those are my quality sessions. Those go in first, and then I overlay. Then I go into, okay, what's like their moderate runs, their moderate rides, moderate, whatever kind of, a moderate swim, whether that's going to be some intensity intervals in the pool or some strength stuff in the pool. Those go in next. And so I have to put them on those days that I feel are best. Normally I'll put hard stuff kind of like on a Wednesday or Thursday. Those tend to be kind of like the higher intensity sessions, because then I have Friday as a little bit of a
Yeah.
recovery day before you load
The
into
weekend.
long stuff
Yeah.
for the weekend. And you've now had a few days after the weekend. And by the time Wednesday and Thursday hits, you should be recovered
Mhm.
from the long stuff that you did the previous weekend. So that's where you can throw in your intensity, is like right around Wednesday or Thursday. Mondays tend to be a little bit of an easier day. I will throw in some upper body strength training on a Wednesday. I mean, on a Monday,
All right, that
just
makes sense.
because the demands to the
Yeah.
legs were too much over Saturday and Sunday, and so Monday your upper body should be relatively fine compared to your lower body. So I may throw in like an upper body, like a push pull kind of method on Mondays, and then throw in, if you ran on Sunday, I may not have you doing a run on Monday. I may have you doing upper body strength and then an easy spin on the bike in the evening. But it is common to have, two workouts a day.
Mhm.
You have a morning session and an evening session. I tend to want athletes to do the aerobic stuff in the morning and then do the strength
The
stuff
evening.
in the evening. I feel like that's the best sequencing. Um, but I do not ever do upper body strength paired with a swim on the same day. I don't do that. I do not do lower body strength days on days where I have a quality run or a quality bike session, which means it's going to have some intensity in those sessions. If I do a leg day, it's going to be followed by like an easy run, like zone 1, zone 2 kind of stuff, or an easy like flush of the legs, spin on the bike trainer, where you can control the intensity, because I find that especially with an easy spin on the bike, it will flush those legs out. So
Right.
whatever kind of stress that you induced in the morning, if you did like your legs in the morning, a morning leg session, then in the evening you kind of come in and flush the stress out and kind of loosen those muscles up a little
Mhm.
bit, and then you kind of go to bed, and it helps aid recovery while you sleep. That's just been
Makes
the
sense.
what
Yeah.
I found to be most beneficial.
Again,
um
if you take it easy.
and yeah. So what I will do is I will pair swims and runs together on the same day. Generally not in the same session.
Mhm.
So we'll pick, whether you want to run in the morning or swim in the morning. Choice is up to you. I typically like to do my swims in the
Mhm.
morning, just for motivation
Mm.
reasons. But we'll pair swims and runs together, lower body strength training and swims together. I will have runs and bikes on the same day, just not in the same session, and they're never both
Right.
quality. So if I say I'm going to do like a tempo effort run in the morning, then I'll make the evening bike session a little bit on the easier side. Maybe some zone 2 intervals. Do like 9x1s or something like that, where it's 9 minutes of steady, consistent pedaling, zone 2 power with a cadence between like 80 and 90 RPMs, and then a minute off, and then you roll right back into it. I find that that's kind of beneficial, but they're never both quality because it's just too much stress within the same 24 hours. So really, when you're planning your week out, you want to think in terms of like 48-hour blocks. What have I done in the span of 48 hours? Because if you go in and you do an evening session and you roll right around the next morning and do another session, which is common, you have to take into account that your body may not be recovered while you slept fully. So if you say, well, if I did a leg session in the evening, maybe I want to do an easier aerobic session in the morning because maybe my legs might be a little bit on the sensitive side, depending on how hard you went in the weight room. Those are the ways that I think of in terms of sequencing the workouts and how to stack them together.
Right.
I'm trying to think on anything else that I consider. I think that's
That covers
kind of
it.
the
Yeah.
ballpark. I think that gives a rough
I
idea.
mean, obviously,
I
it's
mean,
like
again,
individual.
everybody
Yeah.
is
So it's like,
different.
it's kind of just a
Yeah, so
general,
it's yeah.
we're just throwing out kind of generally how we think of it. But obviously, it is going to be sort of taking into account like injury risk and things like that when we're planning this out. And, whether the person's just starting out or they're more advanced, and that those are all things obviously we're kind of considering. So it does get a little probably more nuanced than that for each individual person. I think for triathlete, I think the risk with triathlon, because you have the three sports, is managing the fatigue. And, I think it becomes a little bit more tricky to do that because you have the three disciplines. So it does become almost like an art to try to get those all of the training in such a way that they're improving in all three sports and not overdoing it and overtraining, which is, I think, fairly common in triathlon, if I'm not mistaken. So I think you reviewed that pretty well and how your thought process is.
I will say, and I'll probably say something that's going to irritate some people, and so that's why I'm going to say it. And it's the role of the brick session. And I don't know what it is about triathletes and their fascination with brick training, but there is a time and place for it within the training plan, and it's not something that always has to be
Uh-huh.
there. Does brick training build adaptation differently than if you just ran and biked? No, it doesn't. It's more neuromuscular than it is metabolic. Um, brick training does not build additional aerobic
Uh-huh.
capacity. It's a neuromuscular thing that you're
Right.
working on. So it's really a pacing thing that you're trying to understand and have the brain engaging muscles in a different way quickly.
Uh-huh.
That's the purpose of the brick session. Does it make you fitter? Absolutely not. It doesn't matter. And so earlier on in the training plan, what I'll do is just for scheduling purposes, I'll have, like, for me personally, today and it's Saturday, so I had a long bike today and I had a run on the schedule. And I do it because I have 4 runs during the week, and so this is a day that I have to do a run in order to get my volume. But I didn't do a brick. So what I did was I ran first and then
Right.
biked. So what it is I'm trying to manage the fatigue that I generate from doing a hard session like that, where you're doing 2 disciplines within a single session. So I want to ensure that I can run with good form. And so I do that first before I get fatigued from the
Right.
bike. That is common for the first, like during the build phase of a training plan. Now, as we get closer to race day, I'll switch those. And that's when I'll start to throw in brick sessions. Is when we start to get into the race specific adaptations that we're trying to generate, is when I'll switch that and say, now I'm going to bike first and then I'm going to run. I'm going to practice those
Uh-huh.
transitions and really kind of get this down. Yes, I still practice this after being in the sport for over 10 years. I'm still trying to work on that. And it's something that we should all do. I do understand, I get a better understanding on how long it takes for me to get my run legs under me after coming off of the bike. And that takes time. And which is why I'm not doing brick sessions only 3 weeks before race day. So if I have a 16-week training plan, then I may start around week 9 or 10. And that's when I'll make that switch and then start throwing in the brick sessions. That gives me a few solid weeks with some high volume bikes and very short runs. These are not like I'm going in and I'm doing a 3-hour bike ride and then I'm going to go run for an hour. That's not the point of it. That stacks on way too much fatigue. It defeats the purpose of the brick session, and they're harder to recover from because now you have to do your long run the next day. So
You did have something where you talked about the role of the brick workout, and I was trying to look back.
there was an earlier episode
I
way
know, and I
back
was trying
when we first
to it's
started.
in
It
there,
was like single digits, I think,
but I
somewhere.
can't find it off
Is the
the
role of
role
the
of the
brick,
brick.
I think. But yeah,
Maybe we can throw it in the
it's in there.
notes or something, but it's in there.
I guess the only thing that I do want to bring in, and this will just be really, really quick, is we've talked about how to structure the training part of it. What I do want to bring in is how to purposefully incorporate recovery within the training plan as well. So, we do schedule workouts and, your Mondays I'm doing this and Tuesday I'm doing that. But one of the things that I found to be really, really helpful is to schedule recovery sessions in there. And these are not a recovery run. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is a purposeful recovery, self-care kind of session where it's like, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to do an infrared sauna for 20 minutes, or I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some cold therapy. Or do some compression therapy in the Normatec system, or we're doing some stretching and rolling. What I do is I actually will schedule those as actual workouts within Training Peaks and create a little block. It's like 40 minutes of this particular recovery. What I found is that when I didn't do that, I wasn't as disciplined of doing the small things that I needed to do in order to stay consistent. So if there's one thing that I try and preach to others, okay, we have to do the small things well. Because if we can't do the small things well, we're definitely not going to be able to do the big stuff. So the recovery, the purposeful, structured recovery that we have to do, that's the small stuff. And so throwing those in there and accounting for and making them work out so that you're accountable to do them. Now you can move those around. That's not like, oh, this is Wednesday, so I have to roll and stretch on Wednesday. That's not the case. I don't want people to think that, okay, you have to do that, but I want it in there so that you visually see it. And so then you're like, okay, I can't do this today, but I can do it tomorrow, and you can move it over. But I don't want like all these recovery sessions to then all get moved to Sunday because now you've moved them all week because you couldn't do them, and now you're doing like 6 hours of recovery stuff on Sundays.
Trying to keep,
but I found that is a helpful tool if you find that you're struggling to do like some rolling and just be purposeful with it. Create a workout and have it in there and be accountable for it, and set your watch and record it, and so that it syncs up to Training Peaks or whatever platform you're using, and you see the little green symbol that you did it. It's very satisfying.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's wrap this thing up. So this has been episode 85 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, where we've talked about structuring your week in terms of creating a training plan. So let's roll out with some housekeeping. We want to thank you guys. If you have enjoyed the content that we've been putting out lately and you find this stuff to be particularly helpful, I would ask that you please consider leaving a comment and a review on whatever platform that you're consuming your content from. If you know that there's somebody in your life who would maybe benefit from a particular topic that we've talked about, send them a link, share it with them, kind of introduce them to the podcast. Maybe it'll help answer some questions that they've got, and we can grow this community out a little bit more, because we do not monetize this podcast. So we do not have ads and sponsors. So the one thing that does help grow the podcast is sharing content with those that you think it would help. Leaving comments and reviews will increase the exposure of the podcast. So If you're willing, we would really appreciate you doing that. It only takes just a couple minutes just to click on 5 stars and say great content. If that's the extent of your comment, that's perfect. It helps. Every little bit helps. So thank you so much for that. Also, we have the closed Facebook group called the Endurance Athlete Journey Podcast Group. This is a source where we're throwing out some extra content. We want to grow this community as a way to interact with each other. Listeners can interact with us. We can eventually get to the point where we're taking Q&A sessions or some extra content to help round out the podcast. So if you would like to participate, just go out to Facebook, search for the Endurance Athlete Journey Podcast Group. You'll just answer one simple question, and it'll let you right on in. And we thank you for joining and being a member of that society. So thank you so much, and community. We are active coaches. And so we are taking athletes onto our rosters. And so if you have found yourself in a situation where you would like to talk about coaching, it could be where you just don't have the experience or understanding on how to sequence workouts, what kind of workouts should you be doing, what should you not be doing, and you want to turn that over to somebody else, or if you're just super busy and you just don't want to mess with it, we hope that you will consider us as some coaches that you want to talk to, because do your due diligence when it comes to searching for a coach. Talk to several of them to try and find one that fits your personality, fits your lifestyle, you agree with their philosophy. That is really, really important. So we hope that you would consider us to be on your list. If you want to reach out to Coach Katie, you can go to fuel2run.com. She does run training as well as dietetic training or planning for all sports. I do single sport and multi-sport training plans and one-on-one coaching. So you can go to tabulaRasaRacing.com for me, Coach Justin. I'll be more than happy to set up a conversation with you and see how we can help you progress forward in your journey. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us. This has been episode 85 of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you all again next time.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. That wraps up today's episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Endurance sports have a way of teaching us patience, humility, and resilience, lessons that carry far beyond the workout. Progress in endurance sports doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from consistency, discipline, and doing the work when it's not glamorous. Wherever you are on your endurance journey, keep trusting the process and honoring the work you put in each day. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone to help on their endurance journey. Don't forget to join the conversation on our social sites to help build and foster a community where we all learn and support one another. We'll be back with more stories and insights from Coach Justin and Katie. Until then, visit the podcast website at theenduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com for more episodes from the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Feel free to send us an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabulaRasaRacing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.